Everyone, welcome back to my channel. And for those who are new, welcome. I know it's been like a while, a whole year. I know life has been lifing, and I'm literally tired of making excuses for why I didn't post consistently. Yeah. So I am back with another story, and of course, it features Vegas and Pete. It's definitely been a while since, you know, new Vegas and Pete content has been out there, but as long as there are still fans out there, which includes me as one of them, I'll keep making them, and hopefully, I'll find more people in the BL community that enjoys some of the things that I enjoy too. Things that I consider spicy, so to say. And we can discuss the content and create reviews. So, without further ado, let's go to chapter 1. So, the house smelled of lilies and rot. See, every surface of the minor compound has been polished until it gleamed, as if scrubbing the floors and draping white cloths over the furniture could erase the memory of what Gun had been. So, men in black lined the halls like mourners in a play, bowing their heads in perfect unison whenever someone of status passed. Outside, the garden was choked with flower arrangements. Orchids, chrysanthemums, roses, the currency of men who wanted to prove they cared. They filled the halls in neat rows, towering wreaths with glossy black ribbons, their petals sharp white against the gloom. See, someone had spent a fortune importing them from overseas, not for Gun's memory, but for the spectacle. Vegas could practically hear the calculation behind every bouquet. This family spent this much. That family spent more. Look at us. Look at how much we valued him. It made him want to laugh. Gun was dead. That was the only valuable part of today. But no one in this room mourned him. They mourned the loss of his power, of their protection, of the fear that used to hang over this house like a permanent storm. See, Vegas sat stiffly at Macaw's, perfectly portraying the picture of a dutiful son. His suit was pressed, his shoes polished, his hair slicked back in immaculate lines. His tie strangled him, but he didn't loosen it. Image was everything. He stared at the casket as if it were nothing more than a piece of furniture. His father's body was inside, his father's legacy, his shadows, his chains. Yet, Vegas felt no grief, only rage. Not because Gun was gone, hell, if anything, the air felt lighter, but because every man in this room had come not to mourn, but to circle like carry on. They whispered, shook hands, offered fake condolences. The mourners, they came in waves, business partners, allies, hangers-on. They filed past, one by one, offering words he'd heard 100 times already. Your father was a great man. Vegas bowed his head, lips curved in something like gratitude. He was a tyrant. You feared him, and don't pretend otherwise. That's what he was thinking. Oh, he left behind a strong family. We have no doubt you'll uphold his legacy. Vegas' smile widened, sharp enough to cut. You mean you're watching? You mean you're waiting for me to fail? If you need support, the doors of my house are always open. Vegas murmured, of course. Support. What you mean is leverage. What you mean is you'll circle like a vulture until you smell weakness. See, each handshake was clammy, each bow shallow. He hated them all. Liars, predators, men who had toasted his father's cruelty in public and whispered against him in private. Now they lined up to perform their grief as if grief itself were a business transaction. They were liars, parasites fattened on his father's cruelty. See, none of them had lifted a hand when Gunn destroyed Macau's childhood, or when he demanded Vegas become his weapon, his heir, his mirror. And now they all lined up to pretend they give a damn. He wanted to tear their throats out. And he could feel Macau stiff beside him, like little brother's jaws tight, his eyes locked on the coffin. The boy was trying really hard to hold it together, to play the part Vegas had drilled into him. Don't cry, do not falter, do not give them the satisfaction. They were Tirapanyakos. Image mattered more than honesty. Vegas's chest tightened, but the boy didn't look at him, didn't dare. Don't look at them. Don't let them see you like this, Vegas thought. He shifted closer, resting a hand on Mikhail's shoulder. Protective, possessive. If the world wanted to devour his little brother the way it had devoured him, it would have to get through him first. More men came, more whispers, more empty promises. Vegas nodded, bowed, accepted, endured. His rage grew. It went on and on until the whole room blurred into a sea of black suits and meaningless words. Vegas floated through it like a ghost, the weight of expectation pressing down on his spine. Then the room fell silent. The doors opened, and Ken Thirapanyakul walked in. Vegas's teeth ground together. He hated him. He hated the way the room bent around him, hated the subtle sneer of superiority in every step. The major family, always watching, always fucking meddling in his business. The shift in the room was subtle but immediate. Spine straightened, whisper died. Ken moved with the calm arrogance of a man who owned the floor he stepped on, because he did. The major family's golden heir, untouchable, his presence here a reminder that no matter what Gunn had built, the minor family house was still a shadow. So Vegas saw that the men who'd ignore the brothers all evening suddenly rearranged their expression into respect. Respect for Ken, not for them, never for them. Vegas' jaw clenched, the phantom taste of blood sharp on his tongue. His father's voice echoed in his skull, jagged jagged as broken glass. Why can't you be more like him? Why can't you be better than him? You're younger. You should be stronger, faster, smarter. You're supposed to eclipse him, not crawl behind him like a shadow. And yet here they were. Gunn was in the ground, and Vegas was still standing in Ken's shadow. Still second, still lesser, still unwanted. His chest burned with it, fury thrumming in his veins. He wanted to laugh, scream, tear the lilies from their stems and crush them under his feet. He wanted to take Macau by the hand and drag him out of this mausoleum of hypocrisy. Instead, he smiled. Thin, perfect, I see. Image mattered more than honesty. So, Ken crossed the hall with the steady calm of a man who knew he'd already won. Every step was a reminder. He had the power, the loyalty, the approval Vegas would never earn. Gunn had wanted Vegas to surpass him, but Gunn was gone, and Vegas was left with nothing but ashes and envy. He stepped in front of the coffin, bowed his head with the practiced solemnity of a dutiful heir, and then turned to Vegas and Macaw. "My condolences," he said smoothly. "Your father was a force. The minor family has lost greatly." Vegas's nails bit into his palm. He wanted to snarl, to spit in his cousin's face, to tell him Gunn had been a monster, not a force. But the words curdled on his tongue. He bowed instead, shallow, his smile a blade. "Your kindness is appreciated," he answered back. It should have ended there, a show of courtesy, another round in their endless rivalry of masks. Then Kin gestured. For the first time, Vegas noticed the man at his shoulder. A bodyguard, plain in a dark suit, head bowed, expression unreadable. His face was familiar in the way background noise was familiar, seen once, forgotten the next. Vegas remembered him, vaguely, from meetings at the main compound, always in the corner, silent. Vegas barely spared him a glance at first. It was normal for Ken to have someone hovering close, another pair of eyes and ears. But when the man stepped forward, bowed low, and Ken spoke again, the meaning landed like a knife in Vegas's ribs. "This is Pete Pungsakorn Sintam," King said. His voice carried just enough weight to silence the nearest whispers. "He'll be stationed here at the manor to assist in keeping things orderly. I trust you'll welcome him." For a moment, Vegas didn't breathe. Pungsakorn Sanctum. Vegas almost laughed aloud. So, this was their plan? Their spy? This soft-eyed little bodyguard with the harmless smile? He looked like he'd be eaten alive in a week. Vegas's smile never faltered. "Of course, cousin. How thoughtful of you." Pete straightened from his bow. Harmless eyes, polite posture, every inch the obedient soldier. Macau shifted beside him, curiosity flickering in his gaze for the first time all night. Vegas's hand tightened on his brother's shoulder. So this was it. Kin's little game. A spy dressed up as a gift. A shadow placed in this house to remind him, again, that he would never be trusted. Vegas dismissed him with a flick of a thought. Just another nuisance. A wannabe macho man who'd be swallowed whole by this house in a matter of days. And yet, Macau's knee buckled, just a fraction, his face paling as the heat and the suffocating perfume of Elise pressed down. But before Vegas could react, Pete was already moving. A glass of water appeared in his hand, offered without fanfare, his other hand steadying Macau by the elbow. Vegas froze. It was seamless, professional, done with such a quiet efficiency that no one else in the room even noticed. But Macau did. He glanced at Pete, startled, then gave a small nod as he took the water. Pete bowed again, retreating into the corner as if nothing had happened. Vegas's mouth curled. Pathetic, he told himself. Transparent, a trick to win favor. But the thought rang hollow. So, Kin lingered only long enough to shake a few hands, trade a few lines of courtesy, and remind the room where the true power lay. Then he left, taking with him the heavy silence that's followed him in. So, as the doors closed behind him, the crowd exhaled as one. Conversation bloomed again, like weeds, too loud, too eager, as if nothing had happened. The mourners drifted back to their games of appearances, raising their voices to be overheard, praising Gunn's memory with one side of their mouths and bartering favors with the other. Vegas sat rigid beside the coffin, hand firm on Macau's shoulder, smiling that thin, cruel smile that felt carved into his skin. The play resumed. The masks were back on. He told himself it didn't matter. That this man, quiet, polite, forgettable, was nothing. A nuisance, an insult from the major family, another reminder that he and Macau would never be free. And yet, something in the air had shifted, barely perceptible. Vegas forced himself not to look again. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the conclusion of chapter 1. And what I think so far of this chapter, uh, it's a pretty interesting way to start the story. As usual, Vegas and Macaw are in positions to pick up where their very selfish and cruel dad left off. And in a funeral setting, all he could think about was basically how he's going to run everything by himself now, seeing as though his whole life he was made to feel by his father's colleagues, family members, influential people, to feel like his whole life he was worthless or he was always in his cousin's shadow. So imagine having to feel confronted by all of those feelings of inadequacy at your dad's funeral. And you know that everyone there, his dad's business associates, everybody, they're basically there to just be opportunists. Uh, and I really like how in the writing or the description, how everything was wonderfully painted to describe how Vegas was feeling. Um, and another thing that stood out to me was that the poor thing, he couldn't even express how he was really feeling around everyone because everyone felt like fucking vultures, or everyone around there was acting like vultures, especially the part where Vegas was thinking back on each and every one of them coming up to him and be like, oh, my door is always open. I mean, how many of us have been in positions where someone has done us wrong, or you suspect or know that someone doesn't like you, and they hit you with the door's always open? That's usually a sign that that person's full of fucking shit and they're just waiting for an opportunity to hold something over your head. But I think it was pretty interesting how they were exploring um, his feelings of trying to hide the fact that he was jaded and slightly bitter about how his father was towards him and his brother when he was still alive, how his father always belittled him but never really gave him the support he needed, and how his father intentionally never made him feel like he was good enough, and like he always had to be in competition with his cousin. So that was a pretty interesting flashback, I will say. And then another thing that stood out to me was when you could see that, while Vegas was going through everything and thinking about, you know, how he's going to process his feelings at the funeral without giving anything away on his facial expression. It was pretty interesting when they got to, like, it got to the part where there was a stark contrast to how everyone treated him versus when his cousin Ken showed up to the funeral, you know, where it made mentions that everyone obviously respected Ken more, whereas they were only dealing with Vegas and his little brother Macau for opportunist reasons. Which is another reason why he felt resentment towards his cousin. I don't really know if Ken is aware that Vegas holds heavy resentment towards him. And I don't know if he cares either, because, I mean, everywhere he goes, apparently, his main focus is just to be a figure of authority, get stuff done, and no matter what he does, he always gets praises from everyone, especially since he came from the major family, the family that is perceived to be the superior one, right? And, I'd understand Vegas. Like, how dare you, while I'm grieving and dealing with these freaking vultures that only came at my dad's funeral to see me and my little brother slip up, how dare you come? And all of a sudden, everybody naturally gives you attention and respect. And on top of that, when he comes to the funeral, it doesn't even seem like he's genuinely sending Vegas condolences, which is another thing that pissed him off. And from the way Vegas's point of view seemed, it seemed like Ken was only there to send someone, which is Pete, introduction to Pete, to spy on him. So, who knows? I mean, this is only the first chapter, and we shall see how this developed. We got to see a point of view on how Vegas first perceived Pete. The typical Pete appears to be boring, polite, an ass kisser, like he's just being nice or accommodating, to seem like he's someone that you can respect and give special privileges to. Is that true in this story? I really don't know. But yeah, it should be pretty interesting to see how everything progresses. I can't wait to see if Pete is going to be someone that Vegas ends up hating. I know it sounds bad, but it's Vegas we're talking about. He's a sadistic and envious and insecure person, but just as much as he has his flaws, he has many wonderful things about him too that he just can't see in himself, because all his life he's been compared to his cousin. So yeah, it should be really interesting to see how Pete fits into the story and fits into the lives of Vegas and Macau, since Ken practically gave Pete away to someone as vindictive and unstable as Vegas. So it should be really interesting to see how those two dynamics work out and how Pete transitions from being around the major family to the minor family, aka Vegas's family and business. So that's my little review of chapter 1 so far. Hope to hear back from you guys next time. And by hear back, I mean like comments or I don't know, yeah, comments and opinions about this story and go from there. I'm pretty intrigued about how chapter 2 is gonna go. So, yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. Feel free to leave your opinions and suggestions about, what story you'd like to also hear from me. BL story. And yeah, can't wait to hear from you guys next time.